Look at this. I made it with a built-in wooden hinge. Okay, let's see how I made all this, and how I fix it so it stays firm and useful. It couldn't be that easy, of course. First, I cut some wooden rods, all the same size. I need 6. And I have to mark the center on each end. My trick for marking the center of wooden rods works great for this. I made that support jig that lets me hold the pieces. With the mark and the drill bit, I am going to make a well-centered pilot hole. To center that pilot hole properly, I have to keep adjusting and moving the drill bit like this for all the pieces on both sides. And now, on the drill press, and with another support jig, I finish making a blind hole on each side. Without the pilot hole, the drill bit would drift, even when using the drill press, and the hole would end up off-center. This time I don't drill all the way through, unlike in a previous video where I made a nice wooden hinge. I think it is better if I hold the piece with a woodworking clamp. Now, I have to route a recess in 2 wood strips. They must be shallow, but wide. There they are. The depth of the recess is equal to the thickness of the router table insert plate, or just a hair more, so I can make fine adjustments in the leveling of the plate. I think that will work well. Above and below, I fill the recess with some pieces of thin plywood. And I screw the plate to the strips. It turned out quite well. Here I have the wooden rods, and that router bit has the same diameter. I use it to route the edges of a couple of boards. On this one, 2 edges. On this other, just 1. The wooden rods don't seat perfectly in that cut, but that is easily fixed by sanding a bit. I measure the depth of the holes I made, and I cut wood dowels so their length is double that depth. These dowels have the same diameter as the hole. I need 5 like this. I put on them a good amount of bar soap. That will help them slide better into the holes, although I should have drilled some holes in the rods to lubricate them from time to time. Here we have all the pieces, so the hinge will work. I'm going to glue this here, alternating the pieces. A little more glue to reinforce. Now I am going to glue the other rods to the other board. The side strip helps me keep both boards well aligned. And I reinforce with more glue, being careful it doesn't squeeze out toward the side pieces, of course. Here we have the hinge assembled. The board with 2 cuts from the round nose router bit goes on the bottom. I have to screw this wood strip here. I fit it flush with the board and drive in some screws. The idea was to use this against the edge of the workbench. The piece I made with the router table insert plate, I screw it to the strip I fastened to the boards. And there I was, all happy, thinking that making this horizontal router table had been a piece of cake. But this wasn't rigid, so to give it strength, I'm going to glue this thick strip here. To match the height raised by the hinge, I have to place these pieces of thin plywood temporarily, so I can clamp it with these 2 woodworking clamps while the carpenter's glue dries. And when the glue is dry, this is finally rigid. I am going to glue another strip in front to make the table stable, of course. I bought 2 metal brackets that have a long slot. I have to make it a little longer. And I have to cut them. But oh, I've just discovered that I bought one smaller than the other. I needed both the big ones. Well, I will manage. I bend them. And they come out super straight. But I need to give a slight curve to the long side. Well, could be better. I have to place a long wooden rod here. I center the brackets in position. I mark on the rod the top of the slots. And I mark on the side the position of the rods. Well, I also mark the position of the brackets on the top board. At the marks of the slots, I drill 2 holes. I am going to glue the rod in place. In the holes, I drive in some screws. Thanks to the marks, I know how to place it. When the CA glue dried, I also added some on the screw threads. A bit more glue to reinforce the rod, though I don't think it was necessary. Now I need to install the metal brackets. But first I have to solve a little problem. This didn't come out at 90 degrees. The 2 edges of the boards are well supported on the router table, and I'm going to route on the strip a surface parallel to those 2 edges. That way this surface is parallel with the edges of the boards. I adjusted the depth of the cut so that when I glue this thin plywood, it ends up perfectly at 90 degrees with the board. Carefully, I hold the square with a woodworking clamp. No need to tighten it. This helps keep the thin plywood in the right position while the glue dries. And there we have the 90-degree angle I need. I placed the thin plywood in 2 pieces. That's what I had. Almost perfect. A bit of sanding and it is flush with the top board, which is what really matters. I cut off the excess thin plywood. Now, with some pieces of paper, I managed to level the router table insert plate perfectly with the side strips. Looks good now. I almost forgot to make the opening for the router bit. If someday I need it larger, I will do it then. I screw this back again. But I discover I still have to shim it a bit at the bottom. And now, it is perfect. I can now put the metal brackets, but I have to cut the front of the slots. Now, the slot fronts are open. I put double-sided tape to hold them temporarily. Okay, I think this is going to work. I make some notches in the protrusions of the bracket. They help the drill bit not slip while I drill some holes. That way I can drive in screws from the inside. I put the bracket in place and lift it together with the board, carefully, so it doesn't move. I drive in the biggest screws I could find that don't go through the other side of the board. And the brackets fit perfectly. Large washer and small washer, a spring washer, and a wing nut. Now I can adjust the position of the board with respect to the router bit and lock it where I need. But, which way do we route? If this were a vertical router table, I'd route that way. So, I'm going to mark with an arrow the direction to route. And now the arrow tells me the right feed direction. Another thing, the board is perfect, but over time it might start to warp. I marked 3 lines underneath. In each one, there's a different height. On each line, I drive 3 screws. They must protrude at the set height. I try to be precise with this. Let's review. Here's one height. Here's another. And here another. Those sticking out below, I cover them. When I am not using this router table, I have to leave the board lowered. That way, it rests on the screws, and they help keep it flat. I am going to screw the router base behind the insert plate. And on the bottom, I decided to screw another board. It will help me hold this router table on top of the workbench. Now I can test it. I adjust how much the router bit protrudes in front. We adjust the board height. I check that it is at 90 degrees. And I'm going to cut a tenon in this wood strip. Okay, this woodworking machine makes lots of wood chips and sawdust with nowhere to go. I will have to make a dust collection system. I'm going to make the tenon longer. Well, I'll have to improve some things. The tenon comes out fine, but the edges on the strip come out very splintered. I have to fix that. Thanks for watching the video. And if you like my videos, subscribe and hit the bell.